Hello everybody and welcome to Army Painting Series 11. We're going to do the Mountains Men this time around, and we're going to paint them in oils. And as always, episode 1, that's about basing. And some of you, if you've seen some of the basing tutorials before, you've seen this particular texture roller here from Green Stuff World. It's a little tough to see the texture on camera, but it's just this fantastic mandala here, the lion. Then you've got these little individual glory, strength, victory. That's perfect for areas like this. And then of course the bases themselves. Now we've got some that are still going to be attached to their bases. This is from Song of Ice and Fire, of course, and we got other ones that we've already taken off and got a pin on there. Now we will be slicing off one or two more just so you get the idea of how to use the razor saw and your pin here. Obviously got the pin vise, we got some carving tools here, X-Acto, the wood carving tools, a couple of different types of glue, the super glue and the wood glue. So there's our heavy gel super glue. We'll use some of the pastes also. I think this time around we're going to go with probably the earth texture like this, because I want to try this. We did this in the last basing episode, so I want to see what this does, especially in these more open areas. Maybe cover a little bit less of the movement tray. So I've got a couple other ones that are in progress here. We've got this one, that's for the Kingsguard. So again, you can see we got strength here, glory, and then we've got our different chunks. Now these are mostly broken pieces. So as we tried to make some for the bases, you have these leftover chunks, we save those. And now we stick these in the corner. So we got victory over here. It's just a really neat thing. Now I'm going to link the how to bake the Sculpey. That's a special tutorial thing. I'll link that in the description so you can check that out. Just a quick thing on how to actually bake your Sculpey. So I've filed the mold lines here, and I'm really looking forward to doing the non-metallic metals on these. It's going to require a few different techniques with the oils. Now let's see what we've got here. So again, Song of Ice and Fire. And now we'll go to the unit that we did before. So you can see how this works. You've got your Sculpey pieces, and then the oxide paste, sandy paste, earth texture, whatever goes in between. So there you go. You can see the bases being formed. Look at that lion mandala right there. I try to save that for, say, characters or the banner bearer. There's a little closer shot of that. And you can see the broken pieces that are up on the jeweler's block there. Those are the ones we're going to stick in between their feet. So again, these are the crossbowmen here. And now you see we start to add the pieces that are left. And we try to have related ones. So we're almost in a way rebuilding our sheet. There we go. I can really see how those are spread out. And then we're just going to use the paste. Now instead of just using the rocks and sand and gravel, where you see that yellow sandy paste, I want to try and use that crackle paste. I just want to see what happens. May not even like it. And I believe we're going to the texture rollers now. So we got the mandala. Actually the Roman is a new one there. And the necrotic one, you saw that. That was a recent basing tutorial. So we've got all kinds of fun different texture rollers here. I'm going to go back to the original scene here, and what we'll do is we are going to slice off one or two guys, maybe just one, because it's not all that difficult, right? And that's what we'll do. The first several things that we're going to base are these guys here that are separated from their base. So we're going to get out the saw, and I'll be right back with that. One quick note here before I get to chopping him off the base. I wanted to show you this. Now this is a different type of Sculpey. See, this is the extra firm gray. It's fantastic because it doesn't get stuck in the roller. The white Sculpey, just remember, and I say this all the time, that is going to stick into the roller. It's going to clog it up. The extra gray, extra firm gray Sculpey is definitely the way to go. Now there is a difference, I believe. I think it's $275 for 15 minutes. I think the other one might be $280 for 20. So just be sure you look at this little instruction here, just to make sure. And it also does translate, 130 degrees Celsius there for your if your ovens in Europe and outside the U.S. Now we've got our razor saw here. I forget who makes this thing. Not very expensive at all. I think it was less than $20, and it's a fantastic one. It's very solid. This again is where our jeweler's blocks are going to come in handy. So instead of trying to chop this guy off and cut off our fingers, we're going to hold him up here. And then we're just going to gently start cutting this way. Now the camera's going to shake a little bit, just the nature of the beast here. But you can see we're moving real slow, so we got 1 foot free. And now we're going to do this again on the other one. This is how I cut all the figures off of their bases. Even the metal broccoli bases like you get from Reaper or even Dark Sword. And you can see we're just doing a real gentle motion here. We're not doing short choppy cuts, just doing these long sweeping cuts here. Now I'm doing this a little more gently just because I don't want to rock the table too much. So there he is. He's off his base. And then we're going to want to make sure there's no burrs here, because that'll make our Sculpey not sit flat. So that's good. And let's see, we're going to get rid of some of the extra gunk here. Now I could take some of my sanding sticks here and file that down, but it's not that big. We'll just use the knife here to get that nice and flat. Now we're going to grab our pin vise. Again, another place where the jeweler's blocks are so handy, because this is very stable now. So as I go to drill this in, nothing's moving. The drill's not moving, the figure's not moving. Just got to make sure that it's level. And that's about all that it takes. And then we're going to chop up our sprue, or not our sprue, our little paper clip right here. We'll get ourselves a nice little clip on that. Something we can now attach the figure to the base. I really do enjoy the heavy gel glue, that's for sure. So let's get this positioned in there. Now the bodies are more of a, say, a high-grade bones plastic, so they're a little bit flexible, which means you might have to really give that a little bit of a press into the hole. But he is now good to go. Let's start making some bases. We are definitely going to start with our banner bearer here. I'll make sure I'm positioned correctly. And I want to either do a lion thing or this. Let's say we want to have the lion texture. So I've got now this has more of a horizontal grid pattern here. In some ways it makes it easier, in some ways it makes it a little bit harder. So there we go. Now you see there is obviously repeated texture. I think this one came out a little bit nicer. And I'm going to break that over there, because as you find out, look at that, how convenient that is. That mandala is about the size, essentially, of a 30mm base. So I am going to snap this and save all that. You would be amazed at how much use you're able to get out of that. And I'm just going to snip the edges of this every so often, trying to make sure they're a little rough and not perfectly round. It's okay to have a little overhang. Too much though, that's going to make an issue for you. So I'm actually going to snip away some of this. That's better. And now a couple of ways you can do this here. So again, we're going to take the knife, take the Sculpey, and we push the Sculpey. The knife stays stationary. We're pushing the Sculpey. We can't cut ourselves because my thumb's not moving, the knife's not moving. All that's moving is the Sculpey. And you saw I rocked it back and forth. All we got to do is glue that down. It is not difficult. The whole idea of all these tools that are coming out over the last several years, it's to make things, obviously do more creative things, but it's also about just having some more fun and make it easier. Now this is really nice here. I could do a whole mandala around this. This is a different sheet here. Now I'm gonna grab this. I have to figure out what's worth saving and what can be sacrificed. I'm gonna start to snip off a few edges here. That's definitely something I can lose. And over here we're gonna have to just get rid of some of that. Too much overhang, and I found this out. You don't want too much overhang. Just going to interfere with the other miniatures on the base. Now there are other ways. We got the block here. Here, let's get rid of some of this. And we can do this. So we're just pushing this wood carving tool right down into the Sculpey. And it breaks some of that away. This is something I try to do also. See, what we're going to do is break some of this away. Now we got to do something where we check the footprint. Okay, they will be able to stand on there because believe me, that can be inconvenient when you've created all this texture on the base and the feet of the miniature aren't going to fit on there, or you haven't given them enough. And each one of these is slightly different. So let's go back to this. Now there's that same texture we used before. We also have these other mandalas here, or roundels, whatever you want to call them. So definitely going to save that piece. It's really good for a corner. And let's grab ourselves a base here. Now this one, sometimes you don't get the smoothest transfer of texture. It's bound to happen. You're not a machine, so it's not going to be perfect. Now again, we can cut off the excess a few different ways. If you feel like this is a much safer way for you, that's the way to go. If you're okay doing this, again, all we're doing is just pushing the Sculpey. The knife stays stationary. One thing it does do when I do this is it almost wears it down more. You get a slightly more rounded edge, and that gives it a little more wear, makes it look a little older. So, see, even here, that is, unless he's in the front row, which we'll do that. We'll just leave him in the front row, see how it works. Now the other added advantage of when you cover the whole base with the texture like this, well, there's nothing around the sides. We don't have to worry about anything else. We're just fine. We don't have to fill in any gaps or whatever. Those are already filled. So we got 3. We got a couple of more of these to do here. So I think we don't want to do any more of the mandalas. But what we are going to do is try and use, see if I can't use that one. I like the little RIP thing here. I'm going to see if I can't save that. Looks like I can. Yep, just enough of it. then we'll break it here. Decision time. I think I want to save this. I can always replace this kind of stuff here. We can even mark that off like that. Now I've also got, let's see if this is going to work. I have one of these, the 90-degree angled carving tools. And the idea is, you'll see it in a second, see how we cut that out so it's almost as if that, yeah, let's do that here. Okay, so we have something like this. Now let's flatten this out. See how the jeweler's block just makes that so much safer. I can even cut in here to sort of indicate the end of that rock. And let's get rid of some of the extra. We're going to do this again over here. Now this, we're doing this on a piece with this texture. We don't have the round thing. We have all of these, basically a bunch of little rectangles here from all the stones. So you can see how we cut that, give it a little bit of a stair-step look. Let's see how that looks on our base. Now I see this one has a little bit of a burr on it. And see how that, just cut that away. We could file it down too. And it fits, that fits just nice. And a little bit of glue onto the base, like so. And we got one more to do. Now the tricky thing is always the placement of these. Where do you place these? Now we've already got that texture used. We already have the strength. Let's see what other fun textures are available. I'm going to do something like this. Like this. And like that. Now let's see if we can cut this down. Gonna grab this 90-degree tool here, and you can see for whatever reason it's kind of nifty because I'm able to not crack stuff like I did with the first couple of tools. This thing here, if I cut some of these away, I'm not necessarily making a circle, but look at that stair step edge that I just created there. I can do the same over here. Now the thing is, I do have to be patient and essentially walk my way up. You'll really see it here. Now we're going to level that out just a bit, and what else we're going to do? We're going to get a few cuts in here. We're going to do the same over here too. I mean, I could even cut this whole piece out here if I wanted to. You can see I'm just working my way over. And once we do this, once we have our pieces glued on, and I do suggest you give the glue a little chance to set. Now, then we can drill some holes and get the miniatures attached. Now, it fits relatively well. We need to cut down a little bit on this. And that, notice we sort of round it off a little. I'm going to do the same on this. See how we just rough up the edges a little. Now, instead of doing the other approach, I mean, you can do something like this. It just depends on how nervous you are with sharp things. I know there's some folks that have really sliced themselves up pretty good for whatever reason. And maybe they're a little more worried about sharp edges. Look at that. Fits on there just perfect. You get a little bit of glue. And there is your set of, I believe, 5 of these bases that now need some people on them. And let's get our movement tray here. Let's see, the banner bear. I think heroes usually go over here, so we're gonna, hero's gonna have a decorative base. I'm gonna go here. There's 3. Where's my 5th one here? There you go. Alright, let's put that next to that. I'm gonna go something like this, because the middle row, obviously these 2 you're going to see the least, so you want to focus. If you're going to have those special ones like that, go around the perimeter. Now we have to position our troops here. Okay, let's go that way. Now, do I want this here? Because see, that sword is going to be whacking our banner bear, who's going to go right here. So that's not going to work unless he's going to be looking at his buddy over here and maybe chopping him off, chopping his head. So I am going to, here, we'll put this right there. And I know I have at least one of these guys. So he's going to go here. What we're just going to have to do is something like, no, like this. So I'll just have him facing backwards. This guy's going to go here because we already have one of these in that front row. This is good. He's just naturally looking off that way. He can go here. And then we've got one more. This was kind of a reclamation project. It was already primed by somebody else. And see his sword. It's going to be a little bit of a Jenga thing here, but his sword does fit in there. Now what we'll do is we're going to move this off to the side. And let's drill some holes. Now I want to have that lion texture show up as much as I can. So I'm moving him just so I can see more of the lion. Gonna grab my drill bit here, position it. Here, let's see if I can. There's kind of no other way for me to do this except have my hand in here. Sorry about that. But you can see we've drilled all the way through. This, I'd like to test them in advance because sometimes you have to bend the, yeah, see? He's a little bit spinny. I can go in here. I think you can see what I'm doing. Just bending it ever so slightly the other way. And now, there we go. Now he's touching. Then we'll get some of our glue on here. Let's just make sure he's pointed in the right direction. All right. Now we've got this guy here. Once again, we want to ensure that we have our texture showing as much as possible, and that means I got to drill a hole about right there. Oh, you can sort of see that. I think we are through, and this is the nice thing because I can feel that I'm stuck in the jeweler's bug. You can see the hole right there. Let's It's better to have a hole in the jeweler's block than a hole in your table. And I think for sure I'm going to have to bend. Oh yeah, this thing's pointed off to in the opposite direction, so we are bending that back. And sometimes a little bit of super glue gets on there, so we're going to scrape that away. There we go. And we're just going to glue him down. Now these figures, the Mountains Men, they're part of the original Kickstarter box or box set. So they were actually sculpted, believe it or not, by a different company. They weren't sculpted by Big Child Creatives. I learned that a while back. Now, once again, texture, we want to save that, which means, and we want to have them looking off to the right side. So we need a hole right about there. And I can tell that I'm through. Like so. And I'm going to have to bend this one again too. I can just see it. So I bend it in a little bit. There we go. So we've saved those fleur-de-lis. Not that the Lannisters are French or anything like that, but it's just, hey, it's part of the roller. It's part of the texture. We'll set this down into our tray. We got a couple of more to do. Once again, I'm going to try and preserve the texture. I think I can drill that hole right about here. There we go. I'm already through it. I can feel that into the jeweler's block. It's really important that once you find a drill bit that matches your pins, or the vice versa, either way, you stock up on both, because, well, now for me, running out of those is definite a possibility. For you guys, maybe not so much. Alright, let's get you down in here. And one last guy here. Definitely want to have the word strength show up. So I'm going to go this way with him. And we'll get our drill bit going. So the next segment, what we're going to do is we'll tackle the guys that are just on their bases. And that's where we're going to start to use some of those broken pieces. But we also have to keep in mind, alright, these guys that are around them, because we don't want to be repeating. We don't have a bunch of, say, lion texture on one place and then none somewhere else. We want to make sure that that is spread out evenly. So there we go. He's on his base. Gonna let these guys dry a little bit, and then we'll be right back with the ones that are still on their base. So stay tuned. Now that we've got these guys on top of their full bases, we're going to do some of these partial ones here where they're already on the base. A couple of things that we have to keep in mind is what's around them as far as the designs. That's just not on the other bases, but also that surrounding area in those corners. So we have to, first thing I usually do is look through my pieces, see if there's something that's interesting, like maybe this here, and we'll just try it. Now this most likely I see as a corner piece, although see, it still fits right there. There we go. So actually I sort of like that, but it also, yeah, we're gonna go with that. I am gonna snip off a little bit of this though. Yeah, we'll just do that. So we'll throw down a super glue here, and you can put say, several broken pieces on this if you want, or just this one, and then fill in the rest with some kind of mud or whatever. Now let's see if we can't find any more little scrap pieces that might work. And if we don't, we can even wait till we break off some from another section. But what I'm going to do is just take a little bit of this, see if it won't work elsewhere. There's another piece I had thought about using, but I think I'm just going to give that a rest. So see, we're just going to go with this right here. Let's trim that down a touch like this. Do the thing with the glue. And what I'll do is, after these dry, just like the other ones, we're going to go in and we will put some of the earth texture in there so that it has time to dry. And what do we got here? So see, there's not much of anything here. I'm gonna possibly take some of this. See, how does that look? Yeah, that'll work in there too. Yep, it's good to go. Just that little dot of glue there. And on the other side, all of a sudden I have a piece like this. We will, just like the before, we're going to snip off some of that. There's another way you can use this. See, I'm cutting away from myself, cutting towards the jeweler's block. Keeps it nice and safe. Keeps those fingers from getting sliced up. You can't paint a whole bunch when your fingers are sliced apart. And oh my goodness, do I see that a lot. Hardly a day goes by that I don't see another photo of somebody's hand wrapped in a bandage or whatever it is they did to it. Oh my gosh. There we go. See, that's a little too straight. We're going to make that more uneven. And now we have the fleur-de-lis. Those are revealed there. Glue that down. Making sure that there's not too much overhang. That's a nice little shard right there, and it may have to go that way. Trim that down. Add this on the front section here. These, as you can tell, they go relatively fast. Now I got some of this nifty texture here. Let's make sure we rough this up a bit, like that. Let's see how that's going to fit. That's okay. I'm gonna have to snip off this part though. You can see that pretty quick. And as I've done before, so I'm gonna rough that up, put it in. There we are. And sometimes if you're basing multiple units, now here, you end up with more of these little nice secondary pieces. But I'm gonna leave that. This is just, there's not much I can do with it. That's just going to be saved for, so I can use the other side of that for maybe some kind of flat scopy piece. But what I'm going to do is Just take that and make it almost like it's part of this other piece. Might as well use all the texture that we've got. And once this earth texture and some of the other stuff goes over the top of it, you won't even notice that line is there anymore. So we'll put him down. So just a couple more of these to go. Let's see what we have here. How does that seem? Go like that. You could do the entire unit this way too. You don't have to cut them off the base. It goes back to that, what do you have time for? If you don't have time to cut all that stuff off the base, well, then you don't have to do it. Because this, well, time-wise, now we also had most of those things cut off their base already. So to factor that in, you have to factor in pinning those. I'm going to actually snip off that back half there. Because the first segment looks like 24. This is not going to take 24 minutes. At least I don't think so. And you also have to add at least another extra 10 minutes for all the cutting that was done off camera beforehand. So something else to consider. Okay, I don't want one of the thick ones here. I want some thinner stuff. If it's gonna go like so. And we'll just chop this down, glue it in place. Yep, this is the last one right here. And just gonna use this piece here. And thinking safety wise, as always, cutting away from myself. And what do we have here? That works. It connects to the other piece well enough. Put that in place. And I'm going to go back to the original one here. I'm going to get some of my pieces off to the side. And let's see if I've got some paper towels. I want to have that handy because for most part, these things stain like crazy. This black one does, and I certainly know the oxide paste does, the red one. The sandy paste, that yellow one, that doesn't do it quite so much. And I think even the brown earth texture is another one that doesn't quite make as much of a permanent mess or permanent stain. So what I am going to do here, I'm just going to put this out of my little temporary palette here. I'm going to use a smaller brush also. I'm just going to throw some of this out here, kind of a staging area. Looks like, good, you can actually see that. I was hoping it would be on camera. And I usually have just smaller junk brushes. Actually, I've found that this is just basically the number 0 craft brush version of the number 8 rounds. Rubbing alcohol for cleaning it works just as well as it does for the green handle brushes. See how I'm just filling all that in. Now I don't want to build this up too much because we did want to see what would happen with our mud effects. Now, the reason I got to put this on now is we want this to dry so we can put the mud effects on top, just like in the last painting video. So we're good to go here. Now we'll get the rest of these. And then from here we work on to the part that can be, oh, I don't want to say complicated. It's a little more intricate because we've made several decisions in our pattern on these guys. The stuff that goes in between really should be based on what we did between the guys that are still on their base, original base like this, and the other ones. Now I'm just trying to not have that go up and over his foot. And I'm going to throw some of this down into here too. There we go. And maybe even a little there. Next guy up. You could put smaller pieces too. These are relatively large, and there was a reason I think you saw. Almost every single one, the piece went all the way underneath their feet. That was so that I didn't have to try and deal with mud and jamming stuff down underneath, especially these guys wearing their sort of long coats. That would not have been convenient. Not at all. So you can almost kind of tell. See, when it does something like that, that's when you know that it just has the potential to stain. Like I said, the sandy paste one doesn't really do that. I think that's why, besides it's the texture being pretty neat, that's another reason why I was gravitating towards that. And you can see it's in the sample pictures, that's what we use, that yellow sandy type paste. Pretty sure that's what it's called. But I've used it so much, I'm running a little bit low, and I thought I could get away with this on a few projects where it's mostly being covered up with the crackle paint anyways. So it really is just a filler as opposed to a texture unto itself. Now, whether or not I use the weathering powders on the, like I did, let's see, was that the Lannister crossbows? I think that was, yeah. That'll depend on time. And we're also going to find out, is this another 4-part episode because we're using oils? However, unlike, say, the Corn Berserkers, the one that we did with the contrast paints that was also done in 4 episodes, there's a little more going on here because we got some yellows to deal with, because that's, for whatever reason, that's mostly what the Mountains men are wearing. I guess there's that whole, the Baratheon yellow association. I'm just kind of guessing at that. Here, let's squeeze a little more in here, and I think that has us pretty well set. Now, I'll show you the unit as a whole. So here we've got our little unit champion or attachment position there, probably either Sandor or Gregor. And I've got both of those. I've got finished ones. What I'll then do is individual tutorials on those. And I don't see the need to fill in any texture there, so we're good to go. Now what we've got to do in the next section of this here is figure out, okay, do we want part of this back here? Because we have only just a couple of the roundels, actually really only the 2, one back here, one up here. So we can use some of these little partial bits of the lion and the fleur-de-lis. Let's see if we can make some use of these in our next little segment here. Now we got to fill in all of our blank areas here. And like I mentioned just before in that last segment, let's see if we can't squeeze in something like this lion roundel here. Now I'm gonna find one of my here tweezers. Does that fit down in there? I think that might, if I get rid of this and a bit of that. What do we have here? So that sort of fits in there, but that's now too close to those. So I'm gonna say is that I want that over here. But I gotta look around and see, is it hitting something? And it seems to be over there. So I snip off a piece, make sure it fits. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna position these with everybody still on the base, and then we're gonna take the guys off the base. I could number them if I wanted to at this stage. What have we got here? So that looks pretty good right there. It reflects we got that texture there, so that's a nice little lead into this one. That's a good one. And once again, I'm looking for this, but this actually can make another nice base. So we're thinking conservation here. I know that sounds a little crazy that we're just conserving bits and pieces of things, but it really does make sense. So I'm going to just snip off a bit of this, and we're going to see if it works in a corner. Oh, like that. So you can see I'm pointing to that in the corner over there. That worked out pretty well. What else have we got that's also going to maybe work for some corners? How about we try this somewhere? Do we try it here? How about here? Now you get my tweezers, and I'm thinking possibly here, but I've got to take this down, and I'm gonna grab these guys, and we're going to start to cut this down, make it fit just like we did when it was a regular, it was just a base and not part of the movement tray. And now, yeah, that works in there. I actually can't see it from my angle. I actually have to look at the camera. And just looking at the camera, I could see that that looked like it fit. So we got this really nifty piece with that little piece of the glory expression there. Now we're going to do the same thing. We're going to rough this guy up. Going to grab the tweezers, see where that can go. Can it go in here? And it does seem that way. I'm going to look at the camera to double check. Yeah, it's a little close here, so we're going to move it. So that works. What's next? Okay, looking for little fun pieces of texture that are left. So we got some here. I'd really like that to go here, which means modifying this to do that. And I'm going to actually cut a little more off. So we got that piece, and this one just sort of fell off. So I'm just going to add it right there. And then I might just use that piece there. but I think I'm going to rough it up a little bit first. Sorry, that's not on camera. Just put that right there. Now, what else have we got? There's another potential shape, and I'm just going to round it out a little bit so that it fits around that other piece. So I think you saw what I just did there. I basically did a little bit of a concave, I believe. Yeah, it's got to be concave, not convex. I need something for an interior bit. And I think this little piece that has, again, some decorative elements on it can work. Potentially right there. And it seems to. Looks like it fits. Again, I have to actually check your view because my view doesn't really show it all that well. And sometimes you just need some plain texture like that. Not everything has to have a super cool texture on it. It's nice if it does, but not imperative. Now we need to shift this way. I need to get some of these little insert pieces into these areas. It's weird, sometimes you just naturally have tons of stuff that goes right in there, and other times it's tough to find something interesting that'll go there. Now, I like that, but I'll show you this time what I did on the other piece. So this has to actually be rounded out a little bit. So again, we're cutting away from ourselves. Let's see how now there's a little bit of curve to that. We are going to do the same thing to a lesser degree on the other side. Put this back up here and hopefully not drop it, because that would mean pieces all over the place. Oh look, I'm just going to use that as a corner piece. I'm going to use that maybe as a piece right there. So once you get a bunch of broken up pieces like this, see, that's a good potential piece right there. Doesn't necessarily take as long. Now we've got this little bit of texture here. Am I still looking for corner pieces? I might just throw that in there. No, that's a little bit on the thick side. So I'm going to take this down. Again, trying not to have things go flying all over the place. And I'm just going to try and cut this down a little bit. Okay, I'll lift this up here, not knock everything off of it. I can see I still need to. I don't necessarily have to use I've got a piece of wood that's here. Alright, we'll go like that. Now, I need to snip off a little more of this. Yeah, I'm just doing this. Maybe it's in the camera view. Cut off a little more. That's better. Now we're going to rotate this around. Get something in here. Then just gonna kind of hunt around for some texture. Got a piece that I can use here, I think. Rounding off an edge. Roughing up the other edge. Drop that in there. Let's see which piece fell off. Oh, I think it's this one. Now don't worry about covering up the arrow or these corner things, because I'm using laser pointers anyway, which I think are definitely superior to just trying to go off of those corners and use a ruler or whatever. It's just, now there's no doubt about it, and it extends out further across the table, as in all the way across the table, so it does make that a little easier. Here, let's snip off a chunk of this, and now that can go in there. I don't think we have too many left. Looks like just one or two more pieces, and then we can start to glue this stuff down. Once again, I'm just going to go with something like this that fits the... So see how that's all going this way? I want this to actually fit there. So I'm going to make that just look like it's part of that little row of stones. Good to go there. And now one last piece over here, and that's where maybe you can throw a touch of this. Snap a little bit of that off, rough up the edge, and we'll call that good to go. Now I'm going to remove these guys, and I have not written their numbers down yet or magnetized them, so we are going to make sure that they go in the order they're supposed to, because at this point we have committed. Just remove them one at a time here. Actually, I think I've got too much refuse on there. It's wanting to tip over. That's better. Okay. Now, I think you've seen me in past videos throw down the texture medium and then put these into it. Just going to glue these on separately here, because I've noticed in the past that some of the pieces, when I do that, it squishes out the stuff underneath, and then I end up having to remove more of it, and try not to have to do that. But this will be the last of the stuff that I gotta glue here. Have to make sure I take into account overhang of the other pieces that are on the bases themselves. I could do the thing with the skulls here too, but I think we're going to leave that for the free folk and for the Boltons. And I'm just going to glue each of these pieces in turn. Actually check in with your camera to, or your view, to make sure that we're not going over an edge. Is this, yep, that's glued down. I'm just going to turn this like so. And that's another thing too, as I keep doing these, the method changes a little bit. It's not necessarily an improvement on the method per se, but sometimes it shifts maybe to match something else that I did. As it is, for those of you that, oh gosh, was it Series 4 is the Lannister halberds, I think? Well, that's a whole different type of basing than this. It's an entirely different type of basing. So I'm going to have to redo. Well, I was thinking of doing a second unit of that anyway. Probably with oils, just to enjoy the non-metallic metal with oils aspect. So we're just about out of super glue. We're using the last of the heavy gel super glue, but we also have the last of the pieces that need to be glued down. Just one more. And now we're going to apply our paste again. Move this back to where it's more centered in your view. And it is okay to thin this stuff with water if need be. And sometimes it gets a little dried out, especially near the cap. So what I'm actually going to do here is just get a little bit of water into this. Just a little bit of water into that, make it flow a little better. Not so much that it ends up flattening out. We don't want that. Alright. I'm sure I'm probably going to have to put some more back out there. And as usual, I'm going to include a link in the description. That needs to get attached here. As usual, I'm going to put a little link in the description to the episode where I not only bake the clay, but also the one where I prime the figures and the bases. I think I do that all the time. And I'm going to try and maintain that habit there. I think I can pick this up now. Hopefully the super glue has set up enough. And you can see the smaller brush definitely helps get this in. Because here's the thing that I noticed. Okay, with squish out from underneath here, I'm going to leave a high ridge right here. Well, if I had any overhang from the Scopy on the base, all of a sudden the figure's not exactly sitting flat. It's not a huge loss because there's the magnets there, so it's not just gravity that's holding it in place. Okay. Yeah, I would like to get into the the cut leaves and that sort of thing. What I'll probably do is link that that episode with the Lannister crossbows where we use the cut leaves and the weathering powders to do some nifty stuff. I'll link that in the description of this. So there could be 4 or 5 links in the description of this. It's something I'm going to do more of. I didn't even realize you could do that. I had no idea. But I noticed in other YouTube channels. Now they're, obviously for them it's really more of a promotion type thing. Because I think some of the episodes I would be linking you to are just other, well, episodes that only you could see. But I think it might make it easier for you to go back and find those as far as just a reference goes, instead of going, what was the episode he was talking about? I think if I can just get it in the description for you, that might be better. Make it a little easier for you. You can see we are trying to mound up as close to the edge of these as possible. Here we are. And like I said, the last thing we'll do is we'll put our crackle paste down there, crackle medium, whatever the heck it's called. Some call it medium, some call it paint. And then we'll do sort of a final analysis of that. And I'll show you a few painted figures so you get kind of an idea of what it is we're going to do here color-wise. This is not really the longest of the basing videos. Unless maybe it's longer than I thought. Well, maybe it is going to be about average. I'm being a little more, sorry about that, a little more careful with these than I have in past videos. I think if you watch some of the other ones, I was really just chucking in the paste here and not being quite this careful. Like I said, I'm trying to get enough texture here because we saw on those Necron bases where we had this material down, it did way better on the crackle side of things as far as giving us that texture than where it was just straight up plastic or scopy. So I took that to heart, and now that's why I'm really trying to make sure we have all of this stuff covered here. Gosh, what is it? The Tully Cavaliers. Now that's going to be a really different one. I want to do one each of those, one with metallic paints and one with non-metallic, just because I think it'd be fun. But I'm really tempted to actually have it look like they're walking through a river. That could be complicated, to say the least. And I also have to decide, the army painting things are all about decisions, right? Is it going to be, well, could it be frozen? So instead of them tramping through water, what if it's a frozen river? And we try and do some kind of ice effect. Because as much as I like the idea of them splashing through water, I don't really think they don't necessarily look like they're walking. They more look like they're standing in place. So it could be interesting if, say, they're standing at the edge of a frozen river. It's really, okay, maybe it looks strange on the battlefield, but if it shows you guys something that you can use later on, maybe in a diorama or as terrain itself, then I think it's worth it. There, I'm just gonna plop that down between those pieces. Like you do. Alright, let's make sure that that's just staying where it belongs. Hopefully I haven't moved this out of view for you guys, out of camera view. But I need to hold this at an angle to see where some of these pieces go. I think we're just about done. We have a couple more strokes to do here. And that's it. Just a couple of more areas to fill in. And that's that. We're good to go. So next up is our crackle paint, and we'll see what this does. We're back at it again, and we are going to try the Green Stuff World crackle paint. Now, as we mentioned, it's thinner than that Agrelian Earth, the GW stuff, but I think it was the thickest of all of the paints that we tried in the other video. So remember, the idea is we start thicker here, you give it a heavy coat, and then here, let's have another area here where we've got the thin down stuff. I think you can, yes, you can see that. That's good. So we're just going to thin that down. And we're just going to alternate between the heavier application and always just have this thinner, more of a liquid wash. And you can see how that goes up and over our black earth texture there. Again, I don't know just how much of this is really going to stay behind. I wanted to try it, see what it looked like, and for you to see what it looked like too. So there's your first base. Ooh, let's go to the next one here. Maybe the other. This is the other thing too. So if we do that same thing where we have the oxide paste or the weathering powders over here, and they go down in the cracks of the stones. Well, now it makes sense that they would also go down in the cracks of this mud here. So that could also be fun. That was something else I wanted to test. It's almost more for future projects than this specifically. I see this one never got its. Well, we're going to do a test now. I forgot to do the black in here, mostly because, well, this figure, which is from, again, it's a reclamation project from somebody else. That kind of tricked me there. The base was black, so I thought I had done the black on it. Note to self. Here, let's get this a little more thick right here. So we're going to have some really hefty cracks on this one. Alright, now, once we get these guys out of the way, then we'll hit the movement tray itself. And then I'll pull out those Lannister crossbows and show you what this is supposed to be like. There wasn't anything. Actually, I've got one it's another Mountains Man unit. Got one that's already sort of prepped here. Now, by the way, what I'll do is I'm going to be using some other. Well, I've got the other unit prepped already, so one or two of the figures that I paint will probably be from that other unit. So if you see one or two bases that don't have the crackle paste on there, you're not imagining things. It's because it's not there. Alright. I think we got one more. Yeah, this is the last one to get the crackle paint. Okay. And I do have to sometimes remind myself, thin it down. So we're going to do that here. Make it thinner. Now a lot of that's just going to get lost because you're doing this entire unit. There we go. Yeah, I think you can see that off to the side. Boy, I can see that. Did you see what happened there? I don't know if you could see that. It just beat it right off the plastic. See, it just did it again. Yeah, see how that's pulling back? So it's a darn good thing that I put the black Vallejo texture paste down first, because there's no way that would have stuck to it. Would have just beat it right off. So that right there, that's a worthwhile test. It's good to know. And I'm gonna get a little heftier pile over here, and then I'm gonna go for some of my more thin down stuff over here. It's from a visual standpoint, I think you can see it because you can see more of the black show through here. Now, one thing I did think about experimenting with is just let the black texture paste be much more wet and almost let these mix together, because I found the Agrelian earth, you could mix that. I think I used it with the sandy paste to do some World War II figures. Wow, look at that, just bead right off of there. Here, I'm going to do it again. Look at this right here where the brush is. See how that just starts to bead away? Can you imagine if I had no texture paste down there? So what's interesting is that the instruction that I just said, having something for it to stick to already. That was on the GW stuff. Now, does this have a similar instruction? It dries, create an eggshell, shake well and apply directly from bottle with a brush. Do not use a dryer to speed up. So it does not mention that, but I'm mentioning that now. Oops. Here, let's spin the rubber block instead of the base. So that is something important to know about this. It's just like the GW stuff, even though it doesn't say in the instructions. Keep that in mind. Definitely want to keep that in mind. You got to have something in place texture-wise first. Now I saw this, oh gosh, I think it was Instagram, Facebook, whatever. Another experiment, could be for maybe another Dark Sword video or something along those lines. But you know how when this crackle paint dries, you're going to get the black paint to show underneath it through the cracks. There's a part of me that wonders, I'm thinking of experimenting with a lava style base, or even maybe even it's a Zinch thing or something where it's blue fire underneath. But in any case, some kind of glowing color that's underneath this. Basically mix this with some kind of darker paint and see if I can get the lava just to show through the cracks by itself. Maybe that doesn't work the way I want it to, but it could be worth it just to see. Okay, and as I said so many times, I try to have, I guess what I'm trying to say is there's a method to the madness as far as which video is done in relation to the other ones. So there was not a coincidence that this one follows the Lannister crossbows, where we did the weathering powders on the base, and we did a little more elaborate cut leaves. It's not a coincidence that we just used this crackle paint on another video before this. I try and make sure that these build one after the other. That was sort of the whole idea of the painting pyramid, was that you were quite literally building your painting ability, and the different techniques were essentially, those were the building blocks that you would use to build that, construct that pyramid. So I try to continue that concept, even though I don't really call them painting pyramid anymore. I suppose I could. Here we go. Always got to have my thinner stuff on hand. Sometimes I'm just going to take just some water even and throw it in here. That'll thin it down. Now there's still some part of the black, especially in the thickest areas, where it's still a little bit wet. So when I add this water and a little bit of it reactivated, so we will have some mixing going on. Minimal, not like the kind of mixing I was talking about. Okay. So I think we are good to go. And what I'm going to do is just set this off to the side. Show you a couple other trays. So here is, when that other one is primed, it's going to look much more like this. Now this is the other Mountain base. You can see we've started to add in some paint. You can definitely see how our side pieces start to show up more. Now this, and this, I wanted you to see this, because the color figure that I'm going to show you I didn't have these lion texture things yet. This stuff is actually to make it the two type of basing blend together, because the two figures that go here happen to be standing on rocks. I said, how in the world am I going to make this blend with the rest of my Lannister stuff? So I just did this out of desperation. So this is, I wanted you to see this because we've talked all the time about making modifications sometimes, changing along the way. Well, this is one of those changes. So the kind of the final segment here, we'll just kind of final thoughts. I'll show you the figures that go in here, and we'll see just what our crackle paint looked like. So we'll be right back with that. Let's take a look at the shape of things to come. Now here are some of the first Mountain Men figures that I did, so you can get an idea of the colors. So we're going to have to deal with these yellows here, and we've got some non-metallic metal, but it's not going to be the super shiny chrome type stuff, that the polished steel like you've seen with the crossbowmen, with the halberds. A little bit different, and you can also see the bark and branch basing. Now you can see I'm going to stick them over here in the tray, and you'll get an idea now of why we did this little thing with the rocks here to make it mesh with the rest of the base. Now here's Sandor, so he basically would go somewhere in here. So we've got that set up pretty well. He fits in there real nice. That is why we didn't use up another one of the roundels in that area. But he can also fit in this movement tray too. Now I also want to get into, before we talk about the crackle paint, kind of talk about magnets. Now good, so we've got obviously our numbers here, and we have, he is magnetized, so boom, he doesn't go anywhere. I have also numbered these, and I put magnets on all of them save for one. Now what you got to do to be able to make room for your magnet is you have to shave off this little number here, and I think this just, it tells you what tray it belongs to. It's so you can put them back in the plastic trays. We don't need that because we have these plastic trays. We want to magnetize to them. These are, all of the magnets that I use are 2mm thick. I believe these are 6 by 2, and this is where the Loctite super thick gel is really helpful, because oh my gosh, doing this with the thin stuff drives me nuts, because when I do this, basically it just stays in place and the glue doesn't drip down when I set it like that. Otherwise it will drip down. Now we have some larger magnets, same company, got them off of Amazon. Heck, I can even put this link in the description for you. We'll have 50 links in the description by the time we're done here. These are 10 by 2s, and what we are going to do is grab number 1 here. So we have that marked down. Let's move this out of the way. Got to get him in position where we want him to go. I would say about like so. And we do that, and that lets me know where I've got to put my dot of glue. I recommend while you're doing this that you not have your phone or any kind of digital device in harm's way, because rare earth magnets and digital devices kind of like, oh, I don't know, battery acid in your stomach, don't really go together. Now this one is important that we face him the right way to get that big old broadsword facing behind him. Let's grab ourselves a magnet here. So you can see that magnet's at a little different place than the other one. Now let's see if we can get ourselves a little glue here. Got to remember where that goes. And there we go. So you can see they don't move around, and these things, watch a few battle reports with these if you haven't already done it. And even though these little handholds are handy, haha, there's a pun intended, I've seen so many exploding trays Nary a battle report goes by that I don't see miniatures quite literally exploding across the battle mat. So here's another one. It is pretty much in the same spot. And there you go. Now we're leaving that space open for Sandor. He doesn't have a magnet on him yet. But now let's do our next one. It gets well, it depends. Some of the figures are just easier to do this with than others. And you can see a lot of the magnets are ended up in about the same space. This again, where that heavy gel glue really comes in handy. So let's hold him down. Since these are just one-piece, non-fragile miniatures, it's not so bad doing what I'm doing here. Literally turn it upside down. Here, let's get a little glue on there. Now this is another one of the tricky ones. So let's see how his sword is oriented, almost like he's going to be chopping off this guy's head. But once I do that, I gotta get in the right spot, hold it down, grab myself a magnet, and don't worry, it still holds to that CMON logo there. That's why I've got the larger magnets. There, let's see, that's position just about right, because they're a little more powerful than the 2x6. Okay, so next one. And now those, if you're wondering, those first couple of painted ones there, they are not the actual color test figures, because those were painted in acrylics a while ago. Oh yeah, I'm gonna go, just want to make sure he's oriented the right way. Yeah, those are done with acrylics, so we want to do these with oils. Now it's possible that I might actually do 2 figures for the color test. It's the nature of oils. Oils likes to be used in bunches. It does not like to be used piecemeal. It just kind of, you don't get the advantage of it that way. Now I think we did that for the Morgul Knights, but if we were doing cavalry there, let's see, there we go. Just a couple more guys to do here. There. Almost finished. And the crackle paint worked out pretty well. You can really see the texture. Just one last guy to magnetize here, and we are good to go. Alright, let's just make sure where that's supposed to go. Okay. And that's that. So we have ourselves a magnetized tray. We'll prime these guys up. Now let's look at our crackle paint here. Let's grab something to point with. So check out where I'm pointing with the brush there. Look at that big old crack in there. Huge crack. Look at this one. See under the sword there? I'll just move him out of the way. Nice big old crack. And then where we thinned it down, we get really small cracks. Look at that right in here, just like we were hoping for. A bunch of smaller cracks there. Even on the bases, we have some really nice big crack. Look at his by his feet there. Check that out. That is very nice. So what the heck? You know what? Where is that Sandor? So Sandor Clegane, the Hound. Alright, we're going to grab one of the smaller 2x6s. You can see I've already scraped off the number there. Like so. Let's get our magnet on this. Give it a few seconds to settle there. We're going to grab ourselves another 10 by 2 or 2 by 10 as the case may be. These guys are really, with those swords, man, they're just all kind of interlocked together. All right, Sandor. There you go. Got it turned over. I'm going to try and center that magnet as much as I can. I'm going to fudge it a little bit. Maybe I can, maybe I can't. We're going to find out. Alright. So Sandor, there you go. Part of the unit. There's Champion. So thanks again for watching. I appreciate all the army painting support. I wouldn't be able to do this. This would not happen. I could maybe do the dark swords and some of the basing things, but all of this, where, well, you and I have learned so much over the course of the last, well, almost year, maybe 14 months or so of army painting videos tops. Check this out. It's developed so much faster. And then when we get to paint this with oils, there's going to be even more fun to be had. So next time you see these guys, they'll be all primed up, and we're going to do our color test figures. If you want to drop a like on this video, that's always helpful. YouTube likes it, makes them happy. And like I say, if you subscribe to the YouTube channel, then you find out when some of those live episodes are going to happen. So thanks again, and I will catch you on episode 2 with those oils and the color test figure.